There we go. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we welcome you live to episode number 40. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we have made it 40 episodes. I can't believe it, and I'm sure neither can you. Right here, guys, Ian Schraier and Rob DeLuca. We are joined here this evening by one of Ian Schreier's close friends, Larry Pertakowitz. Larry, welcome to the show, and welcome to episode number 40. How are you? And thank you so much for coming on here this evening.
Well, Joey, thank you so much for having me. I'm a big fan. I'm excited to be on episode 40, especially when, as a huge Mets fan, Steve Cohen closed the deal today. Happy times are coming to Queens.
There's no doubt about it. Ian and Rob DeLuca, it's been, let's call it one hell of a week. But aside from all of the chaos and drama, how are you?
I thought Friday is supposed to be a news dump day, Joey. All of a sudden, Friday became Alex Cora's back in Boston. Steve Cohen closes the deal. We have an election that's running 3 days late. It's been a great week, to say the least.
What a year this week has been, huh? My God, if this couldn't get more, if 2020 couldn't 2020 anymore, it figured out how to. It really did, but yeah. And then you see the Red Sox in the midst of the election drama, just try to sweep that under the rug. Like, yeah, we're just going to hire our former cheater. It'll be fine. Thinking no one would notice. But no, great day for the Mets. Mets fans must be ecstatic. And a lot of changes were made almost immediately. So buckle up, Queens, because it could be a fun ride for you.
Ladies and gentlemen, as we did say just a few short seconds ago, episode number 40, we come to you live on the I-95 Sports Network on Zingo, channel 198. We cannot thank those viewers abroad and stateside that have tuned in on this Friday evening. It is a gorgeous day here on the East Coast, so if you are in your cars listening to us or sitting outside and soaking in whatever temperature, warm temperature is left here in the New York area, we really do appreciate you coming aboard. So also in the beginning, you did hear our introduction song, Dirty Little Hipster by Black Cats NYC. Our good friend Andrew Giordano, he is the lead musician. He is the lead singer and the one on guitar for it. The name of the song, Dirty Little Hipster, is currently available on Apple Music, Deezer, YouTube, SoundCloud, Amazon Music, Google Play, Pandora, and Spotify. Please listen there now and get a copy of Dirty Little Hipster, because it's a pretty good song. So really, really good stuff there in the beginning, and can't thank Andrew Giordano enough for that. Continuing on. So, guys, as you said in the open, the New York Mets, Steve Cohen, he tweeted out and he said the deal is done, the deal is closed. This is really good stuff for New York Mets fans, and I want to actually look to the Mets fans here, Ian Schraier and Larry Pertakowitz here. Now, you guys as Mets fans, the hurting is over, the drama is over. What do you guys anticipate now happening with, I don't know, the next few days, the next few weeks? We already saw what happened in the first couple of hours.
I think for the Mets, I did not expect. I knew Steve Cohen. There was a lot of rumors that he was going to come in and clean house. He didn't wait very long after the closing. He got rid of a former Wilpon guy, former GM of the Mets, Omar Minaya, amongst a few others, a couple of assistant GMs, Allard Baird, Adam Guttridge. He needed to make it his team. I get it. You know, when a team comes under new ownership, you really want to make the team yours. Look what happened with the New York Islanders when they came under new ownership. They gutted out the GM. Gar Snow wasn't there anymore. But Brody certainly left a record for himself with regards to, you know, his short 2-year career with the Mets. Certainly the move that made him the most famous was sending Kalenic to the Mariners for Robbie Cano and Eddie Diaz, and the list kind of goes on from there. I'm really not going to, you know, repeat too much, but I thought, I mean, let's take it back 2 years ago to when Brody was named the general manager of the Mets. It was the first time that we had ever seen in a front office in baseball, we had actually seen a sports agent, somebody with experience of working on negotiating contracts and working in an agency, come to serve as a general manager of a Major League Baseball franchise. I thought, and I'm sure Larry can attest to this as well, that we thought that this was going to be something different, something fresh, something we haven't seen before. I did not expect in the 2 years that he was going to completely gut the entire franchise of its farm system. And now, we're going to get into Lindor in a second. There's talks of the Mets having the pieces to complete a Lindor trade, but there's been so much that's happened with this franchise over the last 2 years that they're now going to have to rebuild their farm system because of Brody. But for what Steve Cohen's done in the last week, the fact that he's gotten onto Twitter, he's interacting with the fan base, he's asking the fans, what would you want to see? Talks of old timers days. Fans were begging last year was the 20-year anniversary of the 2000 season. Let's bring back the black jerseys. Like he's doing so much to do right by the fans. As we've said, he's a Long Island guy. He's from Great Neck. He was born and raised a Mets fan, and it's great to see him already try to connect with the community.
Right. And that's an important thing that you mentioned, Ian, is that how he's catered to the fan base because he is the fan base. And I think that's so important that you see in his heart that he actually does care about the Mets and wants to see them succeed. I think he's a guy we know he has deep pockets. But I think he's also seems to be a guy who is smart with that money. I think it was important to get a fresh start to really get rid of most of the front office. You can tell he must have been a Sandy Alderson fan. Alderson's going to remain on. He's John Rico is going to remain on, who is a favorite of Sandy Alderson. There's even talks that J.P. Ricciardi may return. In fact, Ian, if you remember, we actually met with J.P. Ricciardi back in 2018 at a lunch event that the Met ticket holders had, and he spoke, and we actually got to speak to him for a few minutes, just in a little group, about 4 or 5 of us. And just meeting him at that point, it seemed like this guy does have a knack for finding talent. And we'll see what they can do when they bring a new front office back together.
Larry, I think you brought up the perfect point, and I want to get to Rob DeLuca in a second. I think you brought up the perfect point in terms of the interacting with the fans, because really now we'll bring up to Ian's point where he brought up about the New York Islanders. And you look at what the Islanders have done ever since John Ledecky and Scott Malkin have acquired the hockey franchise out here on Long Island. And Steve Cohen is pretty much taking a page out of John Ledecky's playbook where yes, we are in the midst of a pandemic, but normally what Ledecky has done ever since he bought the team back in 2014 at games when he was part owner or, about to become owner, the incoming owner, if you will, he would interact with the fans. He would go throughout the building and he would say, okay, great to meet you guys. What can I do for you? When I officially, purchase this team, or once the team is in my hands. And that's what Steve Cohen is doing, where not only on Twitter, he doesn't have many followers yet. He doesn't have a blue check mark yet. And I think right now, because really the first time I saw it, I thought it was like a burner account. Truthfully, I really did. I didn't think that was. Yeah. And the coolest thing is that he is now talking to the fans via Twitter, via social media, because we are in the midst of a pandemic and you can't get out there. You can't get out to to any season ticket holder event and say, hey guys, what do you want? What could we do for you? How can I be a successful owner? Rob DeLuca, your thoughts as a Yankees fan, now looking in and seeing the New York Mets now becoming a humongous problem for the Yankees in terms of free agency.
Yeah, I mean, look, the New York Mets, Queens just became a whole lot more popular out there. I mean, this is now a very appealing destination out there. I mean, look, this is great what Steve Cohen is doing. This is absolutely great. I mean, this seems like an owner who gets it, who is adapting to the times we are living in by just getting a Twitter and interacting and being like, look, we're going to do this together. As an owner, I want my fans' input. I want us to do this together, and that is how we can keep on winning together, because it is one big movement, and you just gotta. And Steve Cohen wants to make sure he is pleasing as many people as he can while keeping a winning product on the field. And I think with the amount of payroll the Mets are going to increase there's definitely going to be a lot of appealing targets out there, like a Francisco Lindor, or like, even, I really do hate to say it, I really do, a DJ LeMahieu. That would completely frighten me, and I would probably cry for the next week if it happened. It's just a possibility like that. You never know what the Mets are capable of now, because they finally have money to spend.
Yeah, and you said that perfectly. Where the free agent market is going to start heating up. We do not know when. The way it is that on this coming Sunday, free agency opens. And I think, again, from what we keep hearing the big three, the same three names for the Mets: Trevor Bauer, George Springer, JT Realmuto. And something that Ian has brought up earlier was there's a possible trade for Francisco Lindor for the Cleveland Indians shortstop, the current shortstop for now. But we did hear the Cleveland Indians just about, I think it was a few days ago, say that it is imminent that we trade Lindor because there now is a money crunch. Listen, we are in the midst of a pandemic. Every single sports franchise is now going to be looking to scrape every single penny off the floor that they can and save every little penny that they can. And that includes possibly and most likely having to ship Lindor out of Cleveland. Why not the New York Mets? How can they do it? Ian, I want to start with you here. You brought up about how they might have to, or most likely will have to, rebuild this Mets farm system, all because of the outgoing Brodie Van Wagenen.
Well, I think what it comes down to for a trade like Lindor, remember, the Mets really don't need, and I use the word need lightly, a shortstop right now. There's too many other positions of need right now. They need starting pitching. So obviously Trevor Bauer is high on that list. This team has not had a reliable catcher since Paul DeLuca. So you're talking now almost 15 years ago since the 2006 season. And they need a center fielder. I mean, George Springer's the name that I think every reporter right now or every source is tying to the Mets because of his local ties of being from Connecticut and playing at UConn. And they need more bullpen help. I know they just Brad Brock and Dylan Betances both picked up their player options, but they need more than that. I mean, you don't know what you're going to get out of Edwin Diaz. You know, you hope Justin, you have Justin Wilson back. You hope you can have another good year out of him. They need some stable guys in that bullpen. So there's so many different areas right now that the Mets need to address. That do you want to start? Now, granted, he's a generational player. He's a top 5 hitter in all of baseball. There's no question about it. But some of the names that are being rumored, I know SNY put out like a prospective trade, Lindor going to the Mets. I think it was for J.D. Davis, Andres Jimenez, and Ronnie Mauricio, one of their other prospects right now that's coming up through the farm system. Ahmed Rosario's name has popped up. I would love to trade Ahmed Rosario for Francisco Lindor. Where's the value right now? I don't see it. I mean, he's been with the team now, 3 years? And the Mets are still waiting for him. I mean, the Mets under the Wilpons always had this history of hanging on to guys too long and then trying to trade them when they had no value. So maybe Rosario's name has a little bit of value, but the names that I read today, according to a source, is saying that they would ask for an Alonso or a McNeil. So they're certainly untouchable. But, I mean, the Indians, as you mentioned, Joey, they're hemorrhaging cash. The Mets, and maybe even the Yankees or the Dodgers, the Red Sox even, maybe there's a handful of teams right now that's going to survive this pandemic and can actually go into free agency and spend money the way they want. It seems like Lindor and the Mets would be a perfect match. I just don't know right now, after Brodie gutted that system, if the pieces that they're asking for right now would even make a trade at this point, at least with the Mets. And
to follow up on that, because you think to yourself as a Mets fan, Larry, is Andre Jimenez, Ahmed Rosario, are those guys the answers at shortstop? And I would say probably not. And how do you say to yourself as Steve Cohen that, how do you try and tell these fans and say, listen, we could sign these guys. We have the money to do it. He's the richest owner in all of Major League Baseball. But do we see a certain type of trade like how the Red Sox and the Dodgers made Mookie Betts? Could we see something like that here with the Indians and the Mets?
I definitely think it's possible, because what makes Cohen different than the other owners is he didn't own a franchise in 2020 where all these other franchises lost money. They played in empty stadiums. They played for just 60 games. So as these teams lost money, in the eyes of Cohen, he walks in day one and he didn't experience that. So that could put him in a different situation. He might want to make a splash, but look, Brodie came in. He wanted to make a splash. Kalanick's gone, And, we get Robinson Cano and Edwin Diaz, and a very disappointing 2019 for both of them. Ian mentioned trading Ahmed Rosario, trading Jimenez. Would they also have to trade a guy like Allen, who was their top draft picks, and that's also for just 1 year of this player. It's not like it's not like other teams years back. You'd make a trade, you'd have this 48-hour window where you could sign an extension. If you were going to get something like that, then I'd say, hey, okay, now we're guaranteed to get this player. But is Lindor special? He is, because he might have had a .8 WAR last year, which was putrid. But I know it's a 60-game season. Since 2015, he is number 6 in WAR, and the 5 players above him are Mike Trout, Mookie Betts, Arenado, Goldschmidt, and Machado. I'd love to be in that company.
Yeah, it's again, it really, really is. But again, as the both of you said, it's so difficult when you don't have a farm system. Do you now take that chance and pull off Mookie Betts 2.0 and make it a Francisco Lindor type thing where you would be making him your franchise player, essentially, if you trade away a little bit in order to get a lot, just because the Indians are so cash-strapped? Are they so desperate? Rob DeLuca, do you see, let's say, for instance, with this Mets team needing all the help that they could get, could they go the route of maybe a Didi Gregorius or potentially a James Paxton or a potentially, who knows, if the designated hitter stays around, could we see a different type of approach from new president in Sandy Alderson?
You could. I mean, look, there's going to be it's what I was saying earlier. It's the new luxury for the Mets of actually having money to spend for the first time in a long time. So they can finally evaluate all of their options and not just look for the one that they have to make because they can't afford others, but rather they can see if this move is the best one and not have to worry about money. And then they can look at another one and then another one. It just is the beauty of changing owners, and changing owners in a very good way, I might say. And, I just think that the Mets are definitely in a great, great spot. They are definitely going to be a very hungry team once we start the 2021 season in March.
Francisco Lindor, in 4 Major League Baseball seasons, he's been an all-star all 4 times, 2 Gold Gloves, 2 Silver Slugger awards. He's averaged 30 home runs, 20 steals per year. He turns 27 this month as well. And also his numbers. He's averaged 285, his batting average 285, his on-base percentage 346, a slugging percentage of 488. And that also included, all of those numbers included a sort of down year for him this year. So what better way to go into a contract year with potentially a brand new New York Mets team where, again, the richest owner in all of baseball, and he could say, listen, you never know what Steve Cohen has in his head. Here's a blank check. Sign it yourself. We'll see what happens. That would be pretty good. As you guys had said earlier, the Mets fired their most of the entire front office just a few hours after that tweet was sent by new owner Steve Cohen. Brody Van Wagenen is leaving the team. So they say leaving. I think, honestly, and you know what, Ian and Larry, I want to get to you guys in a second on this. Omar Minaya, special assistant to the general manager. That is tenure or segment number 2 where we've seen Omar Minaya with this franchise. Well, 2 strikes, you're gone, I guess, for him. Allard Baird, vice president, assistant general manager, gone. Adam Guttridge, assistant general manager, systematic development, gone. Jared Banner, executive director of player development, gone. This is a process that you would figure, especially during a pandemic, that would have taken, I don't know, maybe a year or 2, guys, to conclude this segment, Ian and Larry, I want to get both of your thoughts. As Mets fans, I don't want to say are they moving fast, but when I know Ian, when we were on the show together last week and the week before, we said, and also most beat writers, most experts have said that this whole rebuilding stage from the top to bottom in terms of ownership is going to take a year or two, especially in the midst of a pandemic, because we don't know what people want to do. A la hockey's Matt Niskanen. We have no idea what people want to do. And we continue going back to that example because people could possibly be retiring. They might not be comfortable going into this unknown. But clearly, Steve Cohen has different ideas. And I think also, guys, him saying Brodie Van Wagenen is leaving, I think is very nice of Steve Cohen.
Go ahead, Larry.
Well, I think it's twofold, right? Steve Cohen had already been planning to buy this team for some time, and you could tell that long before this deal was closed, even when he was bidding against, J-Rod, right, the conglomerate that wanted to buy the franchise, that he had a plan in place. The idea that Sandy Alderson was coming back is not something that came out a week ago. It was something that has been known for some time. And I think the fact that Cohen is a fan, and it seems that he's an avid fan that actually follows the team probably on a daily basis, is why we've seen these moves happen so quickly. I've had conversations with Ian. For example, Ian's not a big Michael Conforto fan. I'm a big Michael Conforto fan, right? And I've said to Ian, we may find out during this first offseason what players Cohen liked as a fan, because you may see players we like that get shipped out just because he didn't like them, even though they're good ball players. So we may see some of that in the beginning, and that might be why we've seen the clearinghouse right away. But like you said, I think he did give Brodie the respect of leaving as opposed to being fired.
It's basically the best way to put it in an analogy is they want to fire you, but they give you the opportunity to write your resignation letter and say, that way, when you want to get another job, it doesn't look as bad that you resigned instead of you were terminated. But right. I think what you're seeing from, and this was something I read a couple of weeks ago, was, and Larry, you're going to have to help me with the money figure. I don't remember exactly what the number was, but a number of years ago when analytics really started to play such a key role in this franchise, the Mets were really one of the last franchises to even get on board with analytics because they didn't even have, what was it, Larry, a couple of million?
It was only a couple of million, yeah.
To basically install and utilize this analytical program that just about every other team in the league was doing, because the Mets didn't have a couple of million to throw at this program that everyone in Major League Baseball was using to make their franchises better. They didn't have a couple of million to throw at this to reinvest in their franchise. I said last week, look at the money, when we spoke about how Cohen was approved by the MLB ownership group. Look how they approached the Yoenis Cespedes and the David Wright injuries and the insurance. They didn't reinvest it into the team. The Wilpons made back, I think it's somewhere in the range of 90% of the amount of money that they invested into those contracts. So to have a guy like Cohen, richest owner in baseball, worth net of 14.5, and as we say on this show, billion with a buh, it's going to be nice to have a guy that has the ability to spend the way he does. And I want to jump back to Joey, one of your points with regards to Lindor, and same thing, and Larry brought this up too, was don't forget the last time, if Lindor does happen and they need to know the right guys to send Cleveland's way. Remember, 5 years ago when they traded for Cespedes at the deadline, Michael Fulmer was the big name that went in, or I should say the Mets really got a steal for Cespedes at the time because Fulmer was a solid arm coming through the system. He had a real good first year in Detroit, and he was never the same pitcher after. So if there's a guy, and remember, the guy who made that trade was Sandy Alderson. So I guess if there's an optimistic way to look at it, is if there's someone that knows how to get bang for your buck, and if the Indians are really that desperate to trade Lindor, you certainly have the right guy at team president to make that move.
And not only that, too, one last point, fellas. In the I guess after Sandy Alderson left or got fired or whatever it was by the Wilpons, where did he go after? He was a special.
He didn't get fired.
Or
he
left. Sorry, he left
because he had cancer.
Right. Yes. He went to Oakland as a special assistant to their general manager. And who is their general manager?
Billy Beane.
Billy Beane. So you know what? Listen, how do we know that he may have not learned a few things while he was out in the Bay Area? Listen, there could be some things, and really, again, with the trades that and the signings, the vision that Sandy Alderson has, but also Billy Beane having, and him maybe staying there for or being out there for a year. Who knows? That could be something else that played into the rehiring of Sandy Alderson. So really,
two different, and I hate to interject there, Joey. I'm sorry for 1 second. Is that it's two different types of franchises run by two different type of ownership groups. Like if you compare, like maybe if you want to compare the Wilpon run Mets to the way that the Oakland Athletics are run, yeah, there's a very strong similarity there because the Oakland A's don't spend money on free agents. Mm-hmm. Like Josh Donaldson was a free agent of theirs. They let it, he walked, and then went to Toronto, had the great years he had in Toronto, and ended up getting the big contract that he did with Atlanta. Oakland's always been a team that's like the Mets under the Wilpons have always tried to grow their talent from within. And then when it comes time to pay them the big, exorbitant contract, they haven't done that. Now, remember, Sandy Alderson, you said that he's learned a little bit under Billy Beane. Sandy Alderson came to the Mets from Oakland. So it was actually his second stint with the Athletics. So he has that experience of knowing what it's like to run a team on a budget. I'll be very curious to see what he does running a team with as much payroll now as they have. Because they have up to, if you don't want to exceed the luxury tax, they have upwards of $90 million in theory in cap space.
Right. And that's really the point that I make too, is that not only did he, and you brought up the perfect point, he was the one to make that Yoenis Cespedes deal for Michael Fulmer. On a budget team, let's not forget, they went to the World Series in 2015. Okay? They went to the World Series in 2015. Yes, they did not win, but you look at some of these players that performed at the right place at the right time, and a lot of them were on very team-friendly deals. So, hey, listen, if anyone can do it again, I truly do believe that it is Sandy Alderson. Fellas, let's get into our next topic. We have about 3 minutes until our 6:31 sports update. But in the meantime, let's get into football. Now, Larry, I have to ask you this. What's your favorite football team, or who is your favorite football team?
Well, unfortunately, I'm a New York Jets fan.
You are a New York Jets fan. So good thing that we will not be discussing your team this evening because, well, they're 0-8. Well, that's the segment.
But wait, Joe Douglas gave Adam Gase a vote of confidence.
Right.
And he's going to keep on losing.
That's right.
Yep.
Let's just leave it there. I'm not even going to start.
Now let's get to the real New York team, the New York Giants. Guys, they
real?
I was about to say
real? That's right, the real. Guys, another game was thrown away. As Ian says here, at the behest. I like that. I like that word.
Fancy word. I like it.
At the behest of Daniel Jones. Now I have to ask the three of you guys, is he the right quarterback moving forward? And a good statistic here to bring up here is that Daniel Jones has 36 giveaways since being drafted in 2019. That is the most in the NFL in that span. Hey, listen, fellas, he learned from the best in Eli Manning in terms of interceptions and giveaways. Let's start with the two Giants fans. Ian Schraier first, Rob DeLuca, and then Larry after. Ian, do you want to punch me in the face right now?
I don't think your football team is that much better than ours, number one, okay? Just because the Eagles might have a little more offensive oomph because Boston Scott can run a wheel route. Let me leave it alone. So let's talk about Monday night's game. With the exception of Daniel Jones, the Giants offense had their best performance of the season, bar none, okay? We've said week in and week out on this show how the defense doesn't get enough credit, and you just feel bad for Patrick Graham's defense because he's done as much as he's possibly could, and this defense is not a defense of a team that would be 1-7 right now. Okay, this team could easily be 6-2 right now. Think about the games that the Giants Daniel Jones has single-handedly given away, okay? The Chicago game, Giants had a chance to win the ball game at the end. The Rams game, they're down 8 in the fourth quarter, driving with less than 2 minutes left. Daniel Jones doesn't go through his progressions, throws a game-ending pick. Tampa Bay, do I need to say more? The Eagle game, Evan Ingram not catching the football, okay? The only game that you could really put on the defense as an indictment on the defense was the Dallas game, because even after Dak went down with that horrific injury, the Giants still couldn't find a way to stop Andy Dalton. Meanwhile, the other 29 teams in the league know how to do that, okay? What happens with Daniel Jones is it seems like he continues to take one step forward and then 2 steps back. Like, let's talk about, like, the last touchdown of the game. He throws a perfect dime, and I'm not even using the pun here for Danny Dimes, because he hasn't even earned that distinction yet, okay? That he throws a perfect ball right into the hands of Golden Tate. They have a chance to tie the game, send the game to overtime, which never even should have gotten that far. They run Dion Lewis on an out route. If he just gets rid of the ball instantly, it's 2. I could care less whether or not there was pass interference or no pass interference. If Daniel Jones is making the right decision, the game is tied. We're going to overtime. He has just not shown that he can get past the mistakes that he has made over the last year. We know that chronic fumbling is a problem. He doesn't go through his progressions. He continually eyeballs receivers, and linebackers and cornerbacks and members of the secondary are continually just eyeballing him and jumping routes and picking off the football. He doesn't roll out enough. Most of these offenses in college, don't forget, are predominantly read option offenses. They're offenses that particularly have a quarterback that's athletic enough to run the ball. I mean, aside from tripping over his own feet in Philadelphia, the guy knows how to run the football. Why isn't he rolling out enough? Why isn't he scrambling enough? Why is he just staying in the pocket? He has the athleticism to do it. That's how Tua, and I know we'll get into Tua as well, that's how Tua built his career at Alabama. Tua spent most of his career in the pistol or out of the shotgun formation and wouldn't even wait for the routes to develop. He instantly rolled out and found an open receiver or ran the ball for 5-6 yards. It doesn't have to be pretty, whatever wins games. But the problem is Daniel Jones is just not doing that.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's no question about it. The Giants probably played their best team game of the season on Monday from all aspects except at quarterback. There's no question that Daniel Jones is the reason they lost that football game. And it's very frustrating that this team is now 1-7. And in reality, they could be something more like 3-4, 4-3. They could be flirting around 500, essentially. And they're not because of stupid rookie mistakes from no longer rookie Daniel Jones. So this is something that's either got to be figured out. Obviously, we're going to ride him the rest of the season because unless he gets hurt, you don't go to Colt McCoy because you're 1-7. It's not like he's going to channel a Nick Foles and run us to the Super Bowl. But he's not – look, I don't think he's the answer right now. I don't think there's a whole lot of hope here. I think that, yes, if he throws that ball immediately, Dion Lewis does catch it. We do get 2 points, and we see what happens in overtime. But he hesitates, almost like he saw that a call was coming because he obviously saw the pressure coming. It was clearly there early. But you can't rely on calls in this league, especially from NFL officials of all people. That will never get you anywhere in this league unless you're Aaron Rodgers. So you just gotta buckle up and get to work here. Because, yeah, look, the turnover thing still isn't fixed. And, yes, I have to agree with Ian. There are only a couple games where you can't pin it on Jones. Like Chicago game, messed it up. St. Louis or Los Angeles game, messed it up. Which game was it where the 19-play drive and ends in an awful throw for an interception? Was that opening week against Pittsburgh? 19-play drive, chance to tie the game. Beautiful drive, some of the best football I've seen from him. Makes another rookie mistake and throws a horrible interception. Giants never recover. So, unfortunately, I can't. Right now, I don't see a future with them. But once again, that'll all depend on if Dave Gettleman is here at the next draft. Because I don't see us moving on from Jones if he's still here. There's just no chance of it.
I would have to agree with that. If Gettleman is still here, I think Daniel Jones is still his guy, and he has to let him develop. If it's a new GM, there's no allegiance to Daniel Jones, and you move on. But this is a Giant team that in their last 5 games, they have 1 possession games, and they're 1-4 in those games. And the defense has played so well for the Giants. This is a 1-7 team with a defense that does not deserve to be 1-7. Daniel Jones, the quarterback rating has been the same from 2019 to where we are today in 2020. But the difference is the touchdown to interception ratio. And it's not just the fumbles and things like that. Last year was 24 touchdowns to 12 picks. At this point, it's 7 touchdowns to 9 interceptions. And, you can try to give Daniel Jones some credit and say, hey, you know what? There was a time when you didn't have Golden Tate to start the season. Then all of a sudden you didn't have Shepard. Now you finally have all of your wide receivers. All right, I understand you don't have Saquon, but he still has not been able to get it together. And, like Rob said, okay, you're already 1-7, so you're going to ride him out for the season. But this is a division, and I know, Joey, you're an Eagles fan, but if things went the right way for Daniel Jones, the Giants could be in first place right now in the NFC East.
I don't think it's a could. I think it's a would be. There's no doubt about it, because their defense is a very underrated 20th. I think it's really, really weird to see that team defense for the New York Giants is ranked 20th.
Well, Joey, because that's what happens when you're on the field for 40 minutes a game out of the night.
Right.
Well, it's that, and it's also that they're actually what they've been the last 2 years is what they're not. They're actually the opposite of what they've been the last couple of years. In recent years, they've been great against the run. They can't stop the pass. It's been the total opposite. I think they're like 20-something in the league in rush defense, but they're a top 5 pass defense in the league. It's the total opposite of what we've seen from the Giants the past few years.
They really made Tom Brady look like the old man he is on Monday, but it's obviously not enough when you don't have the quarterback yourself.
And it's big. It's a passing league now. They've clearly shown that it is a passing league. So to be among the top passing defenses is a big deal. But then now you can't stop the run.
It's really, really difficult because, the New York Football Giants got their one and only win this year against the Washington Football Team. Each of the last 5 games for the Giants have ended in 1 possession games. In 1 possession or more. Just 1 possession. They've been 1 possession games, and the New York Giants have lost 4 and have only won 1 of those games. Again, being against the football team, and they are also 13-43 since 2017, which is the worst in the NFL, going up against. We don't know who. Most likely it'll be Kyle Allen, but who knows? There was some talk with the New York Giants. There was some rumblings of Golden Tate wanting out of New York. There were some rumblings that he was told to go home from practice. That he was not seeing eye to eye with Daniel Jones. He was not seeing eye to eye with Joe Judge. I think there's so much turmoil in New Jersey that I think the biggest thing here is that exactly what you guys said. Quarterback has to, I guess, play himself out of this year. And really, it all comes down to the general manager. It doesn't have to do with with COVID. It doesn't have to do with Saquon Barkley, because as Ian said earlier, you have no more excuses. You have Evan Ingram, who, again, has been an extreme disappointment, and you can probably trade him for pennies to the dollar. That's the problem. Golden Tate, who is a receiver who has a fantastic resume, but clearly now he's getting frustrated. Sterling Shepard is back. And someone that we've always spoken about the last few weeks, how about Darius Slayton as well, who really we have not heard his name much at all. It's really a shame to see what's going on in New Jersey, because both sides of the lot of the stadium there, both the Jets and the Giants, have a combined 1 win. The last time that the Giants won, October 18th, 2020, against the football team. Anyone want to chime in as we move on to the next segment?
Yeah, Joey, real quick there. You mentioned Darius Slayton. That was the best receiver that you actually could connect with on any sort of pass, whether it was the occasional deep ball that he would throw or even his short pass, even just his 10-yard gains, 5-yard gains, or, the famous Jason Garrett checkdowns. It didn't matter. He could always find Darius Slayton, and all of a sudden he's starting to ignore him because very, very possible a little bit of an outcry from Golden Tate. And it was because it was also clear that Golden Tate was not seeing targets from Daniel Jones on a regular basis during the games because he was working too well with Slayton. And it seemed like the odd man out was Tate. It didn't make sense. But when you work good with some, you got to keep going with it. And the fact that he's just let Darius Slayton be pushed to the side as a number 4 guy, which he clearly is not on this roster, it's mind-boggling sometimes.
I disagree slightly, Rob, and I'm going to tell you why. I think that with regards to, and I'm going to come back to Golden Tate, I think a big reason why you're not seeing Darius Slayton incorporated into the offense the way we have been recently is because the Giants can't get the ball downfield. Daniel Jones does not have enough time in the pocket to get the ball downfield. When they're inside the red zone, and he's going to have enough time to get that ball into the end zone, at least so you would think. But when they're on their own, when they're in their own territory, and he needs a few seconds to let that play develop, he's got a pass rusher right in his face in the first couple of seconds. So the problem is Slayton's not seeing the ball because he just can't get the ball downfield because he doesn't have enough time.
You do have a point there. I mean, that's something we've been saying for at least 3 years now with this horrid offensive line.
Second piece of it, Golden Tate, it's because his wife is like, oh, he's open. Listen, I love Joe Judge. He passes the eye candy test for me, no questions asked. He reminds me a lot of Belichick in regards to the way that he is a take no CRAP from anybody in that locker room. He doesn't care who you are. He's going to sit you. He's not going to play you, whatever you want. Remember, Andrew Thomas, their their first-round draft pick, I forgot which game it was. He was late to practice, sat the entire first quarter. You can't teach that in coaching. Most coaches are going to be like, that's my star left tackle. He's trying to create culture. He's trying to create atmosphere. And that is something the Giants have not had since Tom Coughlin.
Yep, great coach. Love it. I think look, if we fire Gettleman, I pray to God, even though I want the best option, I really do want someone that'll work with Joe Judge. I think he is absolutely the right answer for this team, for the situation that they're in right now. Not even a question, hands down. Everyone seems to love him too, with maybe the exception of Golden Tate. But yeah, you mentioned it. His wife's freaking out on Twitter. Like, can we please not get a Mike Hoffman situation into the Giants? The Giants. That's the last thing we need here.
Ladies and gentlemen, your 631 sports update. This is the first time in nearly 30 episodes that we've done a sports update. And in our first segment of the Primetime Rundown, we did a 516 sports update and a 631 sports update. And for the Long Islanders on here, most likely know why, because 516 and 631 are the two area codes out here on Long Island. But 631, the sports update, we are 13 minutes late to the party. But something that we need to say here that is actually, I guess we can call it sports update. The NBA will be returning on December 22nd with a 72-game season. And that has been agreed upon by the NBA and the NBPA, the National Basketball Players Association. And the reason why we bring that up is because there has been some responses to that, and one of which being LeBron James. His response is that it is an emoji of a player, of a man going like this. So clearly he's not too happy about that. And according to ESPN, This is the shortest offseason, according to the Elias Sports Bureau, in American professional sports. 71 days between the end of the season from the 2019-20 season that lasted almost a year, and now with the start of 2020 and 21, it's 71 days in between. So that is your 631 sports update right here on the Eastern Observer.
I'm going to add something in there on that. Don't complain. LeBron shouldn't be complaining, number one, unless he's worried about losing his title, number one. I'm going to take us across the pond here for a second. And Rob, I know, is a big Premier League fan anyway. I think it's maybe 2 months between the end of the Premier League and the start of the next one. Stop complaining. You coach the Lakers. There's a coach there, but he's a figurehead. Like stop. You just want a title. What are you complaining about? Why?
Yes.
Why?
Yes, Ian. I have to agree with him 1,000%. And that is what really grinds my gears, and it clearly grinded Ian's gears too. This is ridiculous. You just won a championship. You are the best player in the game and probably the second best player of all time. Get over it.
Larry, would you like to add anything to that before we continue with football?
Well, listen, I'm not surprised that they've agreed to start right before Christmas. You know, the goal was always to have, their big Christmas Day basketball. The NBA has a high viewership on that day. So it just makes sense that that's what they wanted to do. But you know what? I guess the last thing to add is, what's going to happen first? Does the NBA season start, or do they finish counting votes in Nevada? I don't know.
That's very good. So that segment, ladies and gentlemen, was your 631 sports update. So 647 here on the East Coast again. Ian Schraier, Rob DeLuca, Larry Protakowicz. I'm Joey Jarzynka. We cannot thank you enough for joining us here on episode number 40. It has been a fun 47 minutes, and we shall let it continue. We cannot thank Larry Protakowicz enough for coming on here and joining us and being our rotational host this evening for number 40. It has been a ton of fun thus far, and let's continue on with football, guys. Let's conclude our 6 o'clock hour with the NFC West, because the NFC West is a real toss-up. And, I think now we can turn away from the election talk, obviously, but toss-up has been the word that we've heard throughout this week. Not only that, but also with football, we could use that term as well. The San Francisco 49ers, the Seattle Seahawks, the Los Angeles Rams, and the Arizona Cardinals. The 49ers, guys, it looks like it's Nick Mullins' show all over again. George Kittle most likely out for the year. Garoppolo most likely out for the year as well. The Seahawks, they continue to prove doubters wrong with that atrocious defense. The Rams, we'll get to them in a second. I know Ian wants to definitely pounce on that. And also the Arizona Cardinals. Hey, great job, Kyler Murray. He's carrying my fantasy team. But again, who really can compete with the Seattle Seahawks? I want to start with Ian here. Let's talk about the NFC West. Go ahead.
Well, I guess I'll make it a two-parter here. Who can compete with the Seattle Seahawks? The Arizona Cardinals are really the only team that can compete at this point with the Seattle Seahawks, just because of the season that look, I had a conversation actually with Larry last night about this, about the NFC West. And I said, look, they were 6-10 last year, but remember the way they started. And, when Kenyon Drake started coming on and Kyler Murray finally started to gel and develop, and that offense was starting to kick it into high gear. And then in the offseason, you acquired DeAndre Hopkins, and you have one of the best primetime games of the year, at least to this point so far, in the overtime win that Arizona had over Seattle at home. They just need to prove Arizona's got a big game coming up this weekend against Miami. I know Tua is starting, but this is a team that needs to prove that the Seattle performance wasn't a fluke. If you look at the games that they've won and the games that they've lost, the games that they won make it really appear to a little bit that they've had a little bit of a cupcake schedule. They've played the Jets. They played Washington. They played the 49ers. Granted, at that point, it was week 1. The 49ers were at full health. So that really, in theory, before their game against Seattle was probably their real highlight of the year, and they played Dallas. So they didn't really have, I guess if you want to look back in hindsight, they really haven't had, besides Seattle, that test yet. They've lost 2 games this year, both to Detroit and Carolina, two teams who on paper are certainly Arizona's a lot better than, or at least so we think. I want to kind of jump over to the Rams here for a second. All four teams right now in the NFC West are over 500. I think when the season's over, only two of those teams are going to be over 500. And I think that's just going to be Arizona and Seattle, and they're both going to make the playoffs. The Rams, Jared Goff, it appears that the Rams have not been able to overcome their Super Bowl hangover from 2 years ago. He's 14-10 in 24 starts since that Super Bowl, 35 touchdowns, 22 picks. That's second most among active starters in the National Football League. The number one guy who has the most interceptions among active starters, Baker Mayfield. So Jared Goff, who at one point we were talking about, this is a slam dunk pick for the Rams. He was picked number one overall coming out of Cal. He's shown everything and more in his first two seasons. Even with Gurley as his back, he was getting the ball out to guys like Robert Woods was making a name for himself in L.A. Cooper Kupp was making a name for himself in L.A. Brandon Cooks, and so on and so forth. In his first two seasons as a starter, he had 60 touchdowns, 19 picks. So you see where things are falling off, and that's where my concern is with the Rams.
Ian, you said there's Super Bowl hangover with the Rams. And I was like, wait, what the hell's he talking about? And I was like, oh, right. The most boring football game of all time. Well, the most boring Super Bowl of all time. Oh, my God. I forgot about it. I blacked it out. It was so bad. But yeah, you're right. I think that definitely plays a part of it. And yes, in the NFC West, I think you're absolutely right. I think it comes down to Arizona and Seattle, probably both making the playoffs. And, when it comes down to it, yeah, Seattle, they've got their doubts. But you know what? There's been one consistent through this whole thing, and his name is Russell Wilson. People cannot continue to doubt this man. He is doing things with different teams each time almost, and continuously getting this team to win and put themselves in playoff positions, put themselves in Super Bowl contention. He has got to stop flying under people's radars because he is the best quarterback in that division. Kyler Murray is probably climbing up the ladders to get to number 2 already at this point. And at this point, after what we saw last night in what was yet another Thursday night phenomena, the notorious Thursday night football games, they really got to start considering dropping Thursday nights for football because these games are awful. But nonetheless, I think this kind of showed that the 49ers are sunk. It is too many injuries, and there's just not enough time left in the season. And because these guys aren't going to be back, I think they might be dead. It's unfortunate to say, but I think their season's over.
I think, and Larry, I want to get to you in a second. I just want to throw in my 2 cents here about the Los Angeles Rams guys. And I know that that Ian did hit the point of Jared Goff and bring up some negative numbers with him there. The one thing that I have to really put the blame on here, and it's not only Jared Goff, guys. We have to look at the general manager and Les Snead. And I think the reason why, too, that a lot of the hangover with the LA Rams continues is because of these contracts that Les Snead was throwing out. And when he was throwing out these contracts, guys, he was throwing out big-time contracts. And we're not talking little deals either. They completely destroyed their draft from about 2 years ago when they traded for Dante Fowler. They also traded, they were also a team, okay? One of, I think, 2 or 3 teams that traded 2 first-round picks for Jalen Ramsey. Okay, granted, he is one of the best, if not the best, cornerback in the entire league. Fine. But you lose a solid corner in Nickel Roby-Coleman. You lose him. You also lose a defensive coordinator and one of the best defensive coordinators, such as Wade Phillips. You also lose LaMarcus Joyner because, unfortunately, he was also on the franchise tag as well. You lose Corey Littleton as well because he's now up in Las Vegas. You're losing all these guys because you simply do not have the cap space. Football is a business. And unfortunately, we have to look back to the Super Bowl year and even the year before when the Rams had one of the best, if not the best, offensive lines. Okay. Yeah. do we remember who was their center? And ever since then, they have not gotten consistent center play. John Sullivan, yeah, he was there. He was there in the Super Bowl year and even the year before too, when they made the move out from St. Louis to LA as well. He was there. He was supposed to be that center to really anchor down that offensive line. We have not seen consistent offensive line play. We have not seen Todd Gurley, obviously, but we do know, and it's pretty evident, that regardless of what he's doing in Atlanta, he most likely does have a degenerative knee issue. So to re-sign him or to whatever, or I mean, listen, they signed him to a big 4-year contract just 2 years ago, and that blew up in their face. Okay. Michael Brockers eventually came back, and that was very lucky because he was going to sign with the Ravens, but because of COVID, that fell through. Lucky for them because they would not have a solid pair alongside Aaron Donald. Listen, can Aaron Donald do it all? Yeah, he can. But how much can he do? Okay. There's really not much now. They have to look now at Leonard Floyd. When's the last time we heard Leonard Floyd's name? When he was with Chicago, okay? They are now getting these scrubs because they've paid too much money to Cooper Kupp, to guys like Cooper Kupp. You have a lot of money now thrown towards Robert Woods, too. Andrew Whitworth. Listen, I appreciate to see what's going on here with the Rams, but I can't fully blame them. Larry, let's conclude the segment with you here with the NFC West.
Okay. So, well, just to piggyback off what you were saying, Joey, is that right? The NFL is a business, right? And that's why you look at a team like the Patriots and how they were good for so long. Tom Brady always took a pay cut. They were never. How many times did the Patriots have cap issues? During their run. But when you had a quarterback who is, amongst the top in the game, who was not being paid that way, you're able to do that. But to go back to the NFC West, it is definitely a two-man race. It is the Seahawks. It is the Arizona Cardinals. And you know what? I think the Arizona Cardinals, the fact not only that they added DeAndre Hopkins, but in the last few weeks to see a receiver like Christian Kirk start to become a name that people have heard before. The fact that Kenyon Drake gets hurt and he's not going to play, but don't worry, they have Chase Edmonds who has got great legs, and I think there's a chance that Arizona won't miss a beat. Do they still have the tougher games to be played? Yes, but I think they'll be able to prove themselves, and I do agree that there'll be two teams that will have 500 records or better at the end of the season. And it will be Seattle, it will be Arizona, and both of them will be in the playoffs.
Yeah, it's really unbelievable to see what's going on in Los Angeles, and really a shame to see what's going on in San Francisco as well. And really, San Francisco, they've just been hit with the injury bug. But that's really been a lot of these teams. They've been consistently hit with the injury bug, and you can't fully blame everyone here where it's, bad quarterback play. Maybe Jimmy Garoppolo's getting exposed. We don't know what the deal is. There's so many question marks in the NFC West, but really, really good stuff. And we'll see what happens. It's clearly a two-man race. Ian, finish off this this NFC West here, just to conclude that to conclude the segment and the 6:00 hour.
Yeah, I think with getting back to the 49ers, there's not really too much to be said other than the injury bug bites them again. And this time it wasn't the MetLife Stadium turf that caused all their injuries. 5 of their final 7 games are against teams with winning records. And with guys like Nick Mullins, last night against Green Bay, despite the blowout, we all knew it was going to be a blowout. They had one starter on defense that was playing, Arik Armstead. After that, that was it. So to ask these guys who still have games remaining against other divisional opponents, among others, like I said, 5 of their final 7 games are against teams with winning records. The only 2 teams that don't have winning records are teams that are still actually in postseason contention. You know why I say that? Because it's the Dallas Cowboys and the Washington football team. That's the other 2 games that San Francisco has left on their schedule. So in theory, you have 7 teams that are all still fighting for postseason contention that are still on San Francisco's schedule. What helps the Seahawks and their putrid defense is the fact that they're going to get Jamal Adams back this weekend after a 4-game absence. he's going to help them because right now Seattle has the worst pass defense of any team in the National Football League. So that's not doing them any favors whatsoever. And then they just made a great move at the deadline, adding Carlos Dunlap to a team that needs more pass rush help. So Seattle has definitely gotten better defensively. They're getting guys back. I still like Seattle to win the division, but like we've said through this conversation, it's a 2-team race.
Ladies and gentlemen, Larry Protakowicz. Larry, really appreciate you coming on. Thank you so much for joining us here as the rotational fourth host. We really appreciate it. We hope that you do join us once again at some point moving forward.
Thank you so much. It was great to be on.
Yep, absolutely. Have a great night. And we are going to get our next guest here in Jim Wexell, and we have a little bit of a problem there. So it looks like we're going to have to go with no graphic there. Sorry about that. I don't know what the deal was there. But ladies and gentlemen, Jim Wexell. Jim, how are you? Steel City Insider for 24/7 Sports. Jim, Joey Jarzynka, Ian Schraier, Rob DeLuca, thank you so much for joining us here this evening.
It's great to be here.
Really.
Is there too much light? I was in the dark here, and I'm trying to get this right. Am I all right?
You are good. Yes, I think over here you are. You're doing so far so good over here, ladies and gentlemen. Brand new book coming out for Jim Wexell. It's called Polamalu, and it's going to be coming out November of 2022, according to Google. I hope that is right, Jim. And
2022, Google
is that and that is
you can get it a couple years early.
Okay.
Hey, I don't know how Google works. Have they been snooping my files? I got something wrong. I don't know. I don't know.
Well, it's going
to come out. It's going to be on Amazon. It's going to be, I'm on Facebook. I'm on Twitter. You'll be able to find me. Any Steelers site, ask around, but it's going to be worthy of reading, especially for Steeler fans, especially for kids. I would get this. I don't want to just say my son, but I think every 12-year-old son should read Troy Polamalu's biography. Seriously, it's what a parent can do for his. It should be an anchor in a young Steeler fan's library, really. And if you saw that a graphic you used, that's the whole cover. So from side flap to side flap. And see, you see the Polamalu going right down the middle. That's your spine of the book. So it folds around. Yeah. I like this better than just the half of it without the hair, That's why I gave you guys this graphic.
I was going to ask about the Head and Shoulders commercial, so I figured that's got to be dropped in there.
I was, doing all this stuff, and Head and Shoulders came up, and I'm like, when did he do his first commercial? And I just wrote to Head and Shoulders, said, contact us. I wrote to him. I said, when did you first do your first commercial with Troy Polamalu? They said, sorry, we can't release that information. I said, sorry, I will not use the word Head and Shoulders in my book. But I ended up did something like this. Brian Clark and Troy Polamalu were Head and Shoulders above the rest of the safety tandems or something like that. And I'm like, should I take Head and Shoulders out? No, it's natural. It's not product. So.
Oh my goodness. So ladies and gentlemen, Jim Wexell. Jim, really appreciate you coming on here. And again, as he did just say a short few seconds ago, Polamalu, it's an inspirational story on Pittsburgh strong safety Troy Polamalu. And you know what? I got to tell you this, just to add a couple of cents in here, Jim. I'm showing my age here. I can't believe to say that Troy is in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, or will be next year, if you will. This year obviously was postponed due to COVID-19, but it's wild to you grow up watching this player, this legendary strong safety with, as we said, the hair, and that's what he's known for, and now you're writing a book about him, and time goes on, it's crazy.
It does. We'll wait till your heroes start passing.
Yeah,
mine and Troy's, as I found out, was Walter Payton. So and he's passed a while, and it just doesn't seem. I mean, I was probably your age. What you're talking about watching Polamalu, I was that age watching Payton. Wow. And Gale Ferris passed. I mean, I'm from Chicago, but I've lived here since the 8th grade. I lived the 70s here in frustration, and the 80s. I didn't care because my Bears were hot. And then the 90s and the 95, I started covering the team. I got to know the people. Class acts. I mean, then it was Donahoe, Cower, and Dan Rooney were the main people. Now Art Rooney and Mike Tomlin and Kevin Colbert. It's just, you just can't help but respect them and like them and want them to win. I don't even think about my old Bears. That's weird too. That's how old I am.
Ian, let's get Jim started up here and Pittsburgh, Baltimore. What a game last week. And Ian, let's get this started.
Yeah, I mean, it was just such an exceptional game between two huge rivals, and a game really to put things at the top of the AFC North, especially with the two teams that are right now projected to be Super Bowl contenders coming out of the AFC, maybe besides the Chiefs. Early on in the season, we really saw the Steelers struggling out of the gate not in terms of their record. Obviously, they're 7-0 for the first time since '78, and in '78, the Steel Curtain team that won the Super Bowl. But it seemed like offensively, they were just really struggling to get going. Their first two games, they go to Cleveland, they win 38-7 against Cleveland, and it seemed like Mike Tomlin was really adamant about the fact that his team was able to finally get going early on in games, and we've seen that over their last three games against Cleveland, Tennessee, and obviously Baltimore. It seems like this team has just been awfully resilient all season round so far at 7-0. Who has really been the most promising surprise in your opinion so far this season?
Promising surprise. Well, Ben's arm looks good. And, you worried that it was going to be one of those late stage Peyton Manning arms where he just wins by guile. I don't know that Ben had as much guile as Peyton Manning, but his arm's stronger than Peyton's was at the end, and Peyton won a Super Bowl. So that's really promising and surprising. Of course, the entire rookie class I was talking about this with Stan Savran today. The two rookie classes in a row. Look how well they're contributing. Let's go down the list. I'm getting the two classes mixed together. Deontay Johnson was last year. Chase Claypool, obviously. Third round pick was Alex Highsmith. He made the game turning play with their three outside linebacker alignment. And then the Kevin Dotson's been a nice player at right guard when DeCastro was down. And Carlos Davis, and the fifth round pick is playing, right? I'm supposed to know this stuff. The fifth round pick is McFarland's playing a little bit. I don't know. Was he the fifth round pick? There's another guy, but all the way down. Justin Lane last year is playing well. So great drafting. And Terrell Edmonds is playing a little better. Cameron Sutton, Robert Spillane, talk about surprises. So, they start slow, but they won because usually they start slow and lose. Tomlin doesn't beat these guys up in training camp anymore, and he probably doesn't give them enough playing time, and they come out slow, but they're usually healthy, and then they get strong as it goes on. So you would hope they get strong as they go on. But I do know, boy, they sure looked not deflated, just blowed is what Brett Kiesel called James Harrison after his 100-yard return. They're flat out blowed. He said, "This is what we say in the NFL, Jim." They told for the Pullamala book. He looked deflated, just whipped. And I asked him that this week, Roethlisberger. He said, "I was." He said, "That was 2 games in a row, but we'll pick it back up for Dallas." I said, you don't have a history of doing that. Saying, I don't know if you follow their history. They've lost some really bad games that they shouldn't have lost the week after playing the Ravens. 2 of those Raiders losses in this last decade were the week after playing the Ravens. They lost to a winless Jet. I believe they were winless. When you say Jets, you just want to say winless Jets. I don't know the year it was, but they were the Jets, and they lost to them after a Ravens game. San Diego, when Josh Victorian played cornerback, I remember that. So I would not give the 14 points this week. And they may blow them out because they're a much better team than Dallas. But there's no way I give the 14 points. No way. This game has me more scared than the Ravens did.
It's very funny, Jim, that you bring up the the question that you had initially asked Ben Roethlisberger this week, and that was actually a question that I took a peek at the transcripts, and I had seen that you had asked the question about getting the enthusiasm back on Sunday, and his answer was yes, for sure. But, against the Dallas team who's giving up 33.3 points a game, which is a league high right now, let's just say also Ben Roethlisberger, who, by the way, had a career low or tied a career low in passing yards in the first half. Is there some sort of maybe a sense of concern if, let's say, he can't get that enthusiasm up and running against a horrid Dallas team that is not only decimated with injuries, but their defense, it's similar to Swiss cheese?
Well, at least I kicked him in the butt about it. At least I put it on the record. Even you see it.
Yeah.
And so I couldn't even remember his answer. I didn't use it because he really didn't. He just went on. Oh, we'll find a way. Well, you probably have better access to what he said than I do. But I was like, yeah, I've heard this before. But the team is so young, and this isn't Josh Victorian's not playing anymore. Antoine Blake's not playing anymore. Ryan Shazier, for the most part, that hole has been filled, even though Devin Bush went down. But Avery Williamson is in the hole if things go wrong. The nose tackle's a little iffy this week, and going against Dallas without a quarterback, I got to think they're going to hand off an awful lot and try to expose up front what the Ravens did. And so with Bugs coming off his first good half of football, he's hurt. He practiced today, but Henry Mondo is warming up in the bullpen as a nose tackle. So, we're going to see – I think we're going to see a lot of Henry Mondo this week. And if we see a lot of the nose tackle in the 3-4, that could open things up if Ezekiel Elliott does Ezekiel Elliott things. So –
yeah, it's very funny you bring that up also because about, with that 3-4 and potentially being exposed by a man such as Zeke Elliott. I want to ask one more question before we head on to our next host here. And you bring up the fact that Bugs is injured, but also their starting nose tackle, Tyson Alu. I always.
Yeah, you had it. You should have saw it.
Alu. There we go.
We're going to go one more Alu, aren't you?
Now, he suffered a knee injury against Baltimore, and then at one point we also saw Cameron Hayward. He went down for the count for just for a couple of plays. The deep breath almost. That you see and you can, picture Heinz Field, let's just say, 5,700 fans or however much, in a half capacity or 30% capacity stadium, just hearing the deep breath from those fans. How difficult is that now for the Steelers? Let's just say, for instance, now they could be down to their third nose tackle. Thankfully, Cam Hayward, he was off the injury list earlier this week. I think on Wednesday or yesterday he came off of it. But Isaiah Bugs, he claims he's ready to go. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, Alu, I sometimes take for granted that you guys, that your audience knew that he was out. But yeah, he got hurt early last week.
Yep.
And when Bugs came in and got pushed all around. I think the Ravens rushed for over 200 yards in the first half, or close.
Yep.
And then the second half, Bugs made some of the biggest plays of the season in tackling Lamar Jackson on 4th and 3. And I believe he caught him on 3rd down, 3rd and 5 before that. And it's because Lamar Jackson was going to test this guy. He had his center one-on-one. He was going to move him around, and Bugs refused to be moved, but then he got hurt. So it's now Henry Mondo who started the season on practice squad. Now, nose tackle's a little different because you don't usually play like it's not the old Casey Hampton days. So, but if Dallas wants you to have them on the field, they'll bring their big guys out and make you put them on the field. And that's probably what they'll do with the quarterback situation. But in the Steelers' favor, the two backers, Spillane and Vince Williams, are run pluggers. I mean, if you want to criticize them, criticize their pass coverage. But if you're going to line up and attack their nose tackle, those two inside backers, they're stout and they're tough and they'll stand up in the run game.
Rob DeLuca.
Yep. So yeah, Jim, I'm just curious here. I mean, I'm a curious guy. I like to think about things like this. It's just, this very young team last year.
Let me interrupt you on that curiosity. Dick LeBeau said that was Troy Polamalu's greatest trait. He was so curious. So there you go.
It's a beautiful thing sometimes.
Mark of a genius.
Rob, you just got compared to Troy Polamalu. That's quite a comparison.
Highest honor, I would say.
You just need the rocks, buddy. That's it.
Maybe I should try it. Maybe we'll see. But this young team last year loses Ben Roethlisberger. They don't perform so well. Ben Roethlisberger comes back this year, 7-0, and now we're talking about possible Super Bowl. What is it about number 7 that is just so important to this franchise, so important to these young guys, that he's just this basic spark plug to rally everyone together and get these wins?
Well, when you were framing the question, it made me think of a really good point. This team did battle last year with those backup quarterbacks, and I think they were 8-4 at one point before they finished 8-8. And it looked like they were going to make the playoffs. So they played in a lot of big games and game planned at a high level, played as hard as they could to do it. So at 8-8, they learned a lot. They learned how to win half the time with novice quarterbacks. So when Ben comes back, now you've got a team that was all ready. They had been hardened, as Tomlin liked to say, iron sharpens iron. And so I've seen this before when key injuries return, then the team really takes off because a lot of people got to play, had to play at a high level, and now it's all paying off. So what does Ben bring? Man, he wants this so bad. He wants to win so bad. He won in his second year and in 3 years later. So in 5 years, he had 2 rings. And here's a guy that was looking at all-time great accolades, and it didn't happen. And the ups and downs of career. Now he's 38. He watched that defense from the bench last year, and he got really hungry, as the players like to say. And he sees that he could win a ring. When they in the offseason, when I was calling other people with the team for the Polamalu book, I was hearing that Ben was really looking great. And they were the upper echelon of the organization was very nervous that the season wouldn't go off. They felt, this is not surprising anybody with the organization, especially when they saw Ben's arm was okay, that they wanted to make sure this season went off because this was a definite chance, and it is a definite chance. It's turning out that way. So they can get number 7 can get number 7, and he can get his 3rd ring. Those are big numbers, 3s and 7s. Those are your lucky numbers in the universe. Somebody find a way to get a 9 in there, and we're good.
Ian Schraier.
Jim, I want to say that thank God for players for draft picks. I mean, look, you said it yourself. Chase Claypool, a 2nd-round talent, and 10 wide receivers were taken ahead of him, and Deontay Johnson the year before that in the 3rd round. Because after week 1, in Juju Smith-Schuster's case, it looks like he's still trying to refine that form, and because he does want to get paid, but he wants to refine that form that we saw of him only a couple of years ago. And I guess the same could be said for James Conner coming off that, the injury that he had. So my question would be, I wouldn't say that they've certainly haven't played up to par where I think Mike Tomlin thinks they should be playing at this point. But could one of them really rise and become so promising down the stretch in a playoff run for them?
Well, the next gen stats, I don't know if you saw the speeds of the Steelers wide receivers. They had 4 of the top 16 in the NFL, but none of them were in the top 5. None of them are elite, as you say, but Juju was number 6. His average go route, miles an hour, and Juju's actually the fastest go route runner on that team. So, yeah, I think Juju can rise up. Ben's not hitting his deep balls at all, and he works on them in practice, and sometimes you can see how frustrated he is, but it's going to come. I assume, because the strength is there. I think he's just missing on the accuracy. He doesn't have that down yet. So once that happens, I think Claypool is their guy for that, because Juju does so much else inside, but he's still got the speed. Yes, I don't want to call him the number one. I don't really know who you would call number one. Tennessee called Chase Claypool number one. They went at him with Malcolm Butler. They locked him on it for the first 3 quarters of the game. So it's pick your poison. But yet I would not underestimate or underrate Juju as a defensive coordinator, because I was surprised to see he had the fastest speed.
One last question, I guess, from me is I kind of want to ask you, just from your experience with the Steelers and knowing the Steelers-Ravens rivalry, to kind of jump over to the evil empire here for a second. Lamar, I mean, the Steelers held him to his lowest completion percentage and passer rating of the season last Sunday. And it really appears that he's shouldering most of the load. I mean, as a quarterback would to a certain degree, but it really feels like the Ravens go as Lamar Jackson goes. So do you feel that, and as a Bears fan, I can't imagine you're too biased in this opinion, but are the Ravens as good as their record says it is, or is a bit smoke and mirrors?
Oh yeah, well look, Steelers needed Isaiah Buggs to stop that, and I just had visions of Joe Flacco finding a rookie receiver. What was his name? With 18 seconds left for like 40 yards at Heinz Field. Remember that game?
That wasn't the Jacoby Jones game, right? Was it? Or
no, it was a receiver. It was a rookie at the time, and he was okay for a few years. He was a speedball. He was a big, fast guy. Well, Flacco hit him, and I was thinking the same thing. And that pass over the middle, that was so close to being completed. There's your game. So, are you going to say the Ravens aren't that good because of one play? I mean, that was a good pass. And Minka made a great play, but is he going to make the play the next time? And is Buggs going to make the tackle? So I have no belief that the Steelers are that much better than the Ravens. There's a lot to like about the Ravens. You want to say they need another receiver, but Willie Snead kills them every time. So, what do you mean need another receiver? I don't know what their passing game problems are. Maybe Marquise Brown isn't as good as we all just assumed. I don't know. But Willie Snead sure shows up every Steeler game, and we know Mark Andrews can play.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned Marquise Brown, because his first game he went up against such a porous Dolphins defense and put up the 3 touchdowns and the 200+ receiving yards, and everybody, he earned the name Hollywood in college in Oklahoma, and it seems like it followed him to the NFL. But it seems like he hasn't been the same receiver since that game, because he certainly earned the well-deserved praise, but he went up against a very porous defense.
He still scares me when I'm, rooting against the Ravens. He's a scary receiver. But like you said, there's something wrong with that passing game. I don't know if it's Lamar Jackson. I don't know if it's a pass protection. They missed Marshall Yonda, but not all that much. I know that guy who replaced him is a rookie, but boy, look what their offensive line did to the Steelers last week. Oh.
Yeah, and Ian, if you don't mind if I ask another question here.
Absolutely.
Now, this is the second, Jim, this is the second all-time or second time in franchise history that the Steelers have started 7-0. 1978 and also now, 2020. Back in 1978, 26.4 points per game, a +3 turnover differential, and 24 sacks. This year, they already have 6 more sacks, and the season is not even close to over. Now, the biggest storyline this past week was Avery Williamson. Now, we saw the Instagram post where Avery Williamson was in his in his whole uniform with the helmet on, trying to hail a cab down in Times Square. And I think that's really amazing. Now, the question that I have for you is that how do you see Avery Williamson fitting into an already amazing defense that has these stars in the making? TJ Watt, Cam Hayward, Joe Hayden, Minka Fitzpatrick, the list goes on.
Well, Devin Bush is injured and a guy named Robert Spillane is playing, and he is shocking us all. So they need depth because Ulysses Gilbert went out, and Avery Williamson was remembered by Tomlin. I'm throwing 20 storylines at you. They're all coming at me that I've been writing all week. Tomlin knew Avery Williamson from his pro day because they talked about Bud Dupree. And Tomlin said he got to know Avery because he could tell he was a football junkie, and both of them gravitated to each other. And so this is what Tomlin does on these pro days. He was at the Kentucky Pro Day. How many pro coaches you think were at the Kentucky Pro Day? I don't know, not too many. But Tomlin loves this stuff. It's not work for him. And, getting on a plane, scouts, it's not the glamorous thing anymore because they're used to it. They do it, and you don't get family time. Tomlin just loves it. Pays off again with his knowledge of Avery Williamson. Do you hear that barking?
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Somebody's poodle got out. I don't know. So anyway, where do they play him? I don't know. They got him cheap for a song. The last pick of the 5th round traded for the first pick of the 7th round in 2022. That just see what I did there. That gave the Steelers back-to-back championships here. But so they got him for a song. I guess they're restructuring the contract. They can make it fit. They'll get a 5th round pick back as a compensatory pick too, because he's a free agent. So where does he play? Well, let's just see if Spillane can keep doing his magic, because how do you explain to the rest of your team yanking Robert Spillane? Really. Yeah. The guy just works hard. He's been here since camp. He gets it. The other thing about Avery Williamson is he played 4 years at Tennessee with Dick LeBeau and Ray Horton. Same defense. They even said there's the same language. So Williamson's getting this down. But Tomlin's going to wait. And he won't even know what he's waiting for. But these kind of questions the answers come to you. If you start to say, well, we got to put this guy in here, that's just never, you guys have all played team sports, that's just stuff, what it does to the rest of the team. It's like, huh? Yeah. So, until everybody can see that Robert Spillane can't do it, then they would make the move. But he's not showing that. He's just scoring touchdowns.
Yeah. Now that we brought up earlier about Baltimore and Pittsburgh, now we know there's also one big injury that did occur on the opposite side of the football, or the other sideline, with Ronnie Stanley going down. And the way he fell was really, really, that was a little, gross there. But he had to be put into an air cast. Now we know, and we were actually talking about this last week on our show, that the next time that Baltimore and Pittsburgh play is Thanksgiving night. And sometimes Thanksgiving night games, and even sometimes in the afternoon, with, the first game being whoever, with Detroit hosting whoever, and always knocking them out, and the Cowboys being terrible this year. But now that night game now becomes really the game of the day, or the game of Thanksgiving. With that being said, Jim, with Ronnie Stanley out and blocking, or being out, and and taking a big chunk of Lamar Jackson's blind side, how big does not only Avery Williamson come in, but also just the defense in general, and attacking this offensive line that not only already lost Marshall Yanda to retirement, but also just lost their left tackle, not only of the future, but of a season that it's the Steelers and the Ravens for the top for the top of the division. It's so difficult because, Cleveland's, they're not really up to par yet, but now it's these two teams going at it. And I don't know if Pittsburgh defeats them, and how big of a loss is that for Baltimore?
Well, it didn't seem like too great of a loss in the game. Fluker and Brown are too big. I know they were talented in college. You guys have watched them more than I have now, so I hesitate to say they're talented, but I liked them in college. Big men that could grind on the run. So, you want to put 250 up on the ground every week, they may be able to continue that. It's always about losing players. The Steelers lost Devin Bush, and he was their Lamar Jackson stopper. He was the guy that they used to spy and with the quicks. And a good team like the Ravens and the Steelers can overcome one. But now you're like, okay, can't lose another one. You're at that point. Like if the Ravens lose another offensive lineman, and you're just feeling like throwing your hands up, but your margin of loss is gone. But I don't want to say it's going to kill your chances because look how well they played in the second. I know things went the Steelers' way in the second half, but there's no way I discount the Ravens. I just assume the Ravens. Watch, they'll be undefeated, and it'll be the Ravens that'll knock them off. Wouldn't that I mean, is that how the universe works? That's how it's going to work. And those Miami Dolphins can light up their cigars and they'll be sending stuff to the Ravens, you know?
And on top of it too, Jim, it is 2020. So everything that you think that happens or should be happening, it's going to be the opposite. Ian Schraier, your final thoughts.
Yeah, just to wrap it up, Jim, this has been an incredible start for the Steelers. We had mentioned that at the start of the interview. Coming off last year with the injuries to Roethlisberger and the fact that, they were playing with Mason Rudolph. And was this, when you were looking at the season schedule, even coming into the year in the wake of the pandemic, did you even think, not in terms of the number of games that were being played, but if a whole season was played without an issue, did you see 7-0 as a realistic start for this team?
Oh, I didn't see 7-0, but I should show you my betting ticket. I got the inside. I got the insider information. What do they call that? Insider trading. I got the inside information on Roethlisberger's arm in June. So I run to the tote board and I see 23.5 to 1. Wow, what's $50? I can lose $50. So it's like what? I don't know, half of 2,300. So then the news comes out. I was one of the guys that wrote a story, and the news starts trickling out that Roethlisberger's arm. So I'm like, well, I should go see the tote board and see how much that moved down. I'm sure everybody's just betting on the Steelers at 23.5 to 1. It went up to 26 to 1. 50 more down. So, as a freelance writer, and I tell you, the last time I wrote a book, I hauled a bunch of books down to Tampa Bay and sold them at bars. There were Steeler parties going on. This was 2009, after the 2008 season. And now I've written another book, and it's in Tampa Bay, and I'm going to take the whole thing down. and I just think that this 26 to 1 is going to pay for my hotel room. So Jim, I expected good things because I watched this team last year. The defense was elite, and then I heard Roethlisberger's arm was good. But 7-0, no, not the way they start. No.
Yeah. Jim, one final question from me here, and also from Rob DeLuca as well, for sure for me. But now you've covered the Pittsburgh Steelers for many years, and there is a familiar face that everyone knows that is going to be reinstated from suspension this weekend, and that is Antonio Brown. So,
I thought you were going to say me. I'm like, oh, okay. Antonio Brown, yeah.
So, with Antonio Brown being reinstated from suspension this weekend, you've covered him for many years, for much of his tenure, I'd assume, in Pittsburgh. Talk about the not only what you've covered him obviously for many years, but talk about the let's call it, I guess, chance number 2 or chance number 3 for Antonio. What are your thoughts on him getting reinstated and going to play down in Tampa Bay?
I gotta believe, no matter how far gone you are, the 2 years out has got to tell you this is your last chance. I think he'd have enough in him. I don't think he's as far whacked as like Donald Trump in the narcissism area, but this guy's pretty whacked. Everybody started blaming Tom on the Steeler locker room, Ben, right away, and I knew that it's AB. He's crazy. So when he came in, we had, the conversations were okay, and then they just gradually went over the cliff. If Tom Brady can handle him, Bruce Arians had him here and just knows. Bruce knows. And Bruce didn't want to, and Tom Brady wanted to. So, okay, BA gets all that. So, I don't even want to say it'll be fun to watch. I don't even know what it'll be to watch. Could be a train wreck, but you would think being out of the league, he would get it, that he's down to a last chance. And with Brady, he could win the Super Bowl. So
Rob DeLuca, final thoughts.
Yep. I mean, yeah, I'll keep this one fun and easy. I mean, look, in my personal opinion, unless the Steelers get complacent, they're going to cruise to 10-0 right into Thanksgiving because it's Dallas, it's then Cincinnati, and then Jacksonville. So unless the Steelers get complacent, I think we should be able to take care of business there. And then, of course, you get the test of Baltimore on Thanksgiving. But if they're to get through that and go to 11-0, from what you just see on strength of schedule and based on who's better than who, you look at all the numbers, the only actual test left there almost – I mean, look, any given Sunday, everyone knows that. But just in terms of all the numbers and stuff, the last test on the schedule would probably be Buffalo in Buffalo. So you got to wonder, can the Steelers send the 72 Dolphins on a little bit of a scare here?
Well, I tell you, that's going to be a tough one for Mike Tomlin. If they're 15-0 and they've got a 3-game lead in the division, a 2-game lead for the number one, are you going to play your guys just to go undefeated? That's like pulling a guy out of a no-hitter in the World Series, you know?
I guess you could say luckily the last game of the season at that point would be against Cleveland, so how bad could it really get even with backups?
So Cleveland's the last game? I have respect for all division games. I have respect for Baker Mayfield, and I think that coach is better than what they've had.
Yes, absolutely.
And winning, you know, Cleveland weather is – I don't know how many games you guys have covered in that stadium, but – how awful being on that lake, man. So, I always think my car's going over when I have to park it. Anything can happen. And I don't know, you know, undefeated season. This team's strong, but that 78 team, I always thought the 78 team was the greatest Steeler team. Everybody wants to say 76. They didn't win a Super Bowl, but they had like 10 shutouts or something because their quarterback was hurt. Then they get in the AFC Championship game, and both running backs were hurt, so they lost. And everybody likes Pittsburgh people like to say the 76 team was actually the best because they want to look smart. But I think you have to win a championship to be considered. And that 78 team was the first offensive juggernaut that they had, and the steel curtain was still young enough. In 79, the steel curtain was starting to fall apart a little bit. And they won more with guile and experience in 79. 74 and 75 were just defensive hammers. And Franco Harris. And Bradshaw was so inconsistent. In 78, when they changed the rules, it was supposed to hurt Mel Blount, but it helped Lynn Swann and John Stallworth. So I think the 78 team was the greatest. And I don't want to put this team down, but this isn't the 78 Steelers. So, you know, Don't give the 14 points this week. Don't start calling 15 million.
Jim said it, and now I got to know because he piqued my curiosity yet again. Franco Harris, did he legally catch it?
Oh, yeah. Well, I think so. I think the bigger question is, did it hit Fuqua? Because you couldn't hit another offensive player back in those days. So, but what?
There you have it. Beautiful.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He caught it.
Jim Wexell, thank you very much for joining us here. The Steel City Insider for 24/7 Sports. Also, again, to promote his upcoming book, Polamalu. It is the story of Troy Polamalu. That will be coming out when again, Jim? Just so we don't take Google's whatever they wrote.
My shipper is shipping latest. It's supposed to be today. We're supposed to ship. And he called and he said, "Your cover. We couldn't get the cover done, so we have to change the ship date to 18th at the latest. But we'll work to get it earlier. But the key is to get it before Black Friday because that's going to be on sale. It's a Christmas gift for Steeler fans. If you have Steeler fans in your family, this is a brand new book. It's going to get all kind of great reviews. I've already got them lined up. I've paid them off. Everything's smoothly. But no, it's really going to be a fun book, and it's perfect gift for Steeler fans. Just check it out. Just Google the internet. But if you look for me at jimwexell.com or see me on Twitter, I'll have a link to my own webpage that we're giving 20% back to Polamalu's charity foundation. instead of, Amazon will take 20%. So if we can sell it on my website and give 20% back to Polamalu, that's win-win for everybody. So that's what I'm hoping for, that people go to my page. So you can find me on Twitter, and then the link will be there by Black Friday will be the day. Hey, thank you guys all for letting me talk about this and for having a fun conversation. I think that you guys are Ravens fans, or
no? Giants on the right and Eagles above you.
Oh, well, we owe you a gratitude today, Eagles fan. Philly saved the democracy.
Oh, boy.
All right.
Oh, man. Jim Wexell, everybody. Thank you so much, Jim. And we will have, for everyone that's watching, we will have all of Jim's information on theeasternobserver.com. Jim, we really hope that you join us once again for some Steelers talk sometime in the future.
Great. Thanks, guys.
Great. Thanks, Jim. Have a great one. And it's really, really been a fun time for Jim with us here. And guys, a really, really great conversation with Jim with us here. And and you know what? I think now we just can't trust Google, because you know what? November 15th.
Could you ever, though?
Huh?
Could you ever?
Well, listen, November 15th, 2022, it says it's expected on. It's expected on November 15th, 2022. And
when the book is done, so that's just awkward. But
that is, and that's very odd. So, ladies and gentlemen, we really do hope that you got to enjoy Steel City Insider for 24/7 Sports, Jim Wexell. He is one of the Steelers insiders, so really, really good conversation for him to come on here and get to discuss his work with the Steelers and the 2020 Steelers as well, who have begun the season 7-0. Ladies and gentlemen, let's continue our chat with hockey. Let's head over into the hockey world here. And I want to discuss the New York Rangers first. We'll save the best for last, which is the New Jersey Devils. Well, ladies and gentlemen,
there's no Mike Emmerich talk this week, so I don't know what you're thinking of.
That's true. The New York Rangers avoid arbitration with Ryan Strome. They agreed to a 2-year deal worth two-year deal worth $9 million, 4.5 average annual value. So that's pretty cool. $4 million for year number 1 and $5 million for year number 2. Also, Brendan Lemieux as well signed a 2-year deal worth about, I think it's $1.7 or $1.8 million. So he's getting paid in the six-figure category. And I mean, I want to start this off here. And I originally thought, because news had broken that that Ryan Strome would get paid just for 1 year. And I thought that would most likely be a deal that was a tradable contract, and especially one that, the Rangers already have nearly, I think it's like $15 million in dead money. Well, let's add another $2 or $3 million to the retained salary column. But I think the Rangers did a fantastic job here with Ryan Strome. You have a third line center now. And he can also even play the wing too. We don't know where Lafreniere is going to be. I anticipate him being on the third line to start. Who knows? Maybe he might be the fourth. I don't know. We'll have to work his way up. We'll see what David Quinn has in mind. But also Brendan Lemieux again, right on that fourth line. Matt Martin didn't really work out. Let's start with the Rangers fan here. Ian Schraier, your thoughts on Strome and Lemieux?
Well, I think Strome is going to start out as a second-line center at this point right now. Before signing Strome, they were just so exceptionally thin at the center position. I mean, that's why I was so surprised in the draft that aside from Lafreniere, that their second pick in the first round wasn't a center. Because it was a position just of dire need, and they went defense. And granted, they got deeper defensively, but they're just so thin at center. So locking up Strome, even albeit at 2 years, is just so important going forward, because once that 2-year deal is up, they're going to have to start paying guys like Kakko and I mean, they already paid Kreider and Panarin, but Kakko and Zibanejad and players like that. So in regards to the Rangers, or I should say with Strome, I mean, you have to be happy in a shortened year how he performed last year. I mean, he had 59 points, 18 goals, 41 assists in a season that was shortened. Like I said, they're very thin at the center position. The key for the Rangers this year, to me, their X factor is their third line center. They didn't draft one. They didn't go out in free agency and really acquire one. Not that there was much out there right now that they could really acquire because they had so much money tied up elsewhere, is who's really going to step up and be that third line guy? Is it going to be Filipino? Is it going to be Brett Howden? Filipino, I mean, he's still so young. I think, he's 19, 20 years old. So he's still got a long way to go to develop. But every year it seems like he'll make some nice steps, some good steps. I mean, this is a team that people are saying that the Rangers really shouldn't start competing for the playoffs for at least another year. So it shouldn't be the 21-22 by the time they should really start contending. But I think if they could really find a way to solidify their third line with one of those players, with guys like Lafreniere and Kakko on the third line, that there's no reason that they shouldn't be contending for a playoff spot this season.
No, Ian, I think you're already in the hunt this year. Just like it's a little similar to my New Jersey Devils. I think they need to be in the hunt. I don't think they're necessarily going to get a spot, but it is very, very important for the sake of the growth of the players for both of our sides, more so yours, to at least see themselves in the hunt. But I do think the Rangers have a very likely chance of sneaking back into a spot because, as we saw before the pause, the Rangers were already trying to sneak back up there. It was unclear if they were going to run out of time or not, but they were definitely getting hot at the right time. So if they can duplicate that, and it'd be very good for the young guys. Even young teams, we saw it with the 2017-18 New Jersey Devils. They were just too young. That's why they were bounced in 5. But even getting there, you get eliminated in the first round. At least your young guys get to see it early. And then they're ready for when they develop next year and go for it again. So I think, and let me just say, bravo, to get back on topic, bravo to General Manager Jeff Gordon. Wow, did you get 2 steals of contracts on these 2 players, especially Strome? I mean, Strome should have cost almost $6 million, I personally think, since it was going to be short term, and they were able to get him for under 5. It's just incredible work there. I thought Brendan Lemieux was going to cost at least $2 million per year, and they get him at just over 1.5. And it honestly, bravo to him. And I think that these are 2 great signings. And hey, this offseason isn't done yet. We still got a little more to go. As it seems like, per Renaud Lavoie of TSN Canada, RDS, the French side of the hockey news, it looks like in the next 7 to 10 days, the NHL will more than likely confirm a New Year's Day start to the 2021 season. So we do not know how many games yet, but I'm sure we will see details in the next week and a half.
Rob DeLuca, that was the 7:18 sports update. We're actually, again, 30 minutes late to the party on that, but that is the 7:18 sports update. And for those that are watching, I do apologize because I did say that was 2 for Brendan Lemieux. I said 2 years, 1.5. That was the average annual value. So it was about 2 years worth about 3.25. That is my mistake. So average annual value for 24-year-old Brendan Lemieux, 1.55 million AAV. Okay. I personally thought that Ryan Strome, I thought he got, the right term, the right amount. Is he a flash in the pan? We saw him perform extraordinarily well with John Tavares out here on Long Island towards the latter part of his tenure out here. But then he burst onto the scene in Manhattan. So again, we don't know if he's doing well. Again, I really do believe that we're finally beginning to see the first round draft choice of the New York Islanders that really is now paying off for their arch rival, for the Rangers. Last year, he had a career high, or he tied a career high in goals. And, he had the most points that he's ever had in his career with 59. Unfortunately, in 3 playoff games, he they were bounced rather quickly in a 3-game sweep with Carolina, but he still put up two assists. So I think that this was right, and I think that he did really well, especially in the midst of a pandemic, where everything is all over the place. And fellas, when I say all over the place, I mean that we don't know the deal with money, with numbers. I want to move on to the next topic, which again has to do with the New York Islanders. And we speak about Ryan Pulock because he was signed to a 2-year deal worth $10 million, $5 million AAV, $6 million in year 1, $4 million in year number 2. And the thing that there's some chatter about now is because of the uncertainty of a flat cap, where there could be a very small bridge deal that Ryan Pulock had kind of alluded to in his chat with Andrew Gross, where because he and Matthew Barzal are very close friends, there is a chance that Matthew Barzal could potentially be making in the range of $1 million to about $4 million. And why? Because we are in the midst of a pandemic again, and he wants to, quote, keep the team together. I think, as an Islanders fan, I think that him seeing the franchise literally bolt for his hometown and karma hitting him literally every single day and every single year, I think he doesn't want that to happen to him, and I think he wants to take the franchise on his back. Listen, he was, according to Tavares, the kid who won the Calder, not Matthew Barzal, the kid who won the Calder. This man wants to make memories at UBS Arena, and I think he wants to be the one to put the Islanders team on his back and say, we are going to close out the barn for forever, and he's going to be the one to do it. Ryan Pulock, 2 years, $10 million. I think that's phenomenal. But again, with 3 years, with 3.7 or something million dollars to the 3.905 million left on the cap. We'll see if those actions eventually come to fruition. Rob DeLuca, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, look, if that's true about where you think Matthew Barzal will be making money, start the Rager, because that is phenomenal news for Lou Lamoriello to get his star player at complete undervalue, not even remotely close to what he would be worth.
Well, it would be a bridge deal, of course, and it would be probably a year or two.
And when the pandemic's over, he'll rightfully get his payday once the cap goes up again in 2 years. But even still, because we've seen about a handful, like I could count on one hand how many big contracts we've seen this offseason. It's still possible to happen, but that's such a beautiful, selfless team move that you would love to see out of Matthew Barzal to say, look, I want to be here, so with us being strapped, let's keep it short, let's keep it simple, and then we'll worry about it when this crap is over. Is just something you gotta love to see. You gotta love the leadership in that moment there, if all of this is true.
Ian Schraier.
Yeah, I think going back to what you're saying about Ryan Pulock, I mean, they had to retain both, and it seemed almost impossible at one point because they couldn't find teams, and understandably so, that wanted to take on the contracts of guys like Boychuk Leddy and Tom Hickey, and this is working out great for the Islanders and Lou Lamoriello. The contract, they needed to retain both these RFAs, as I said. Pulock gives them that big shot off the blue line. He's a tremendous defenseman as well. He's the only offensive defenseman, maybe besides Boychuk, and Boychuk is continually hurt, that they really have on that blue line. So, and then I figure the only way that they would be able to retain Barzal at this point was maybe to try to backload his contract, and that's exactly what it's going to be. Listen, you gotta. I mean, if you thought Barzal had a bad year, I wouldn't say a bad year, just a very inconsistent year last year. Well, you love him. You forget that, and you love him even more now because he's telling you, listen, I want to stay an Islander. This is where I see my future, and all the chips are falling where they may right now for the Islanders, because that's great. I mean, he's going to make a couple $1 million this year, but down the road he's going to make so much more.
Yep. Very non-snake-like of Matthew Barzal.
Yeah, and you know what? Listen, we have not heard it directly from his mouth. And going back to what Rob DeLuca said, the legitimate snake there. But listen, we have not heard of anything from the Matthew Barzal camp. We have not heard it directly from him. So we don't know if it's true. We do believe, though, we would figure that Ryan Pulak, I don't know if he'd lie to the media, especially to the guys out here that went through the John Tavares dilemma and drama and departure, if you will. So who knows? We'll see what happens. But again, this, I do believe, sets up a perfect payday for Matthew Barzal once the Seattle expansion draft occurs. And I think right now that Matthew Barzal doing such a selfless thing, where you can't say that for two Toronto Maple Leaf stars, such as Tavares and Mitch Marner, who were completely selfish in what they did. And, that's okay. That's whatever, but we'll see what happens there. Let's keep it moving forward here with and for some reason, listen, Rob DeLuca put into our little prompt here about his New Jersey Devils. So you know what?
I like that.
So you know what? Listen, let's make him happy. And
I have nothing to add on it. So
there's not much to say.
This is a solo Rob DeLuca here.
Because we're 4 minutes off the top of the hour. We got to get
okay. And that's okay. But Rob DeLuca wrote, for all the fans that are watching out there, Devils remain quiet. Wonder when Bratt and Blackwood deals may come. So I shall ask our insider, Rob DeLuca, here this question. Well, Rob, I wonder when Jesper Bratt and Mackenzie Blackwood's deal may come. When do you think it's going to come?
When we're close to the season and we actually have to give them contracts by then. There's no rush. We're in the middle of a pandemic. There's no rush on it. I'm not even worried. They're not going to be offer sheeted, and if they are, they'll be matched instantly because we have more money than Kingdom Come in reaching the cap. So
I asked Rob DeLuca
literally nothing to worry about here.
I asked Rob DeLuca before the show if he felt bad because on the prompt it said Islanders and Rangers, and there was nothing in there about Jersey. There is nothing about Jersey right now in hockey.
There's nothing exciting about the state of New Jersey, nor the state of the New Jersey Devils going on.
Listen, and you know what? Listen, I gotta tell you, there was no one as surprised as this man when you put the New Jersey Devils in there. Like, what are you doing? Oh, really?
I was wondering if you guys were going to see the joke. It seemed like you did in the chat when we were talking offline, but
do you wonder if somebody might have been tweeting or somebody might have been standing in the press conference for Joe Douglas when he made that comment about Adam Gase, or no?
Yeah, I did it. It was me. I did it.
It's unbelievable. All right, moving on.
Let's conclude our show here with a brand new segment that we are going to come up with every single week, and that is going to be our kudos section. And it's very similar to Pardon the Interruption, and it's similar to like what they do, where it is a sayonara or happy trails, if you will, to select topics. So I'm going to start off with my kudos here, and my kudos is going to start off with ESPN sportscaster Joe Tessitore, who was on the call for Boston College and Clemson, and his son makes a play with Joe on the call, which really is amazing. And it was a very father-son moment that you heard, and it was really, really amazing where he went out and he came out and said it, and he was as professional as possible. Tessitore makes this, and he's just talking about his son. Really, really cool moment to see there. And not many people can say that they've done that or will do that, to be calling their son, who is a collegiate athlete. One more kudos for me, guys. our good friend Curtis Gabriel has signed a contract with the San Jose Sharks. So kudos to him. He's been putting in so much work, and he's been doing a fantastic job with his Pride tape and being the only National Hockey League player to ever play a hockey game with multicolored tape. Really cool stuff. He did it did it with the New Jersey Devils, and he made hockey history there. Now he's going to make hockey history out in the Silicon Valley. And I would not be surprised if I see him or we see him in the NHL this year, because really, the Sharks don't have much. And I don't want to discredit or undermine Curtis's ability. But again, you have to think it's the Western Conference, and the Western Conference is all about being big bullies. And they're slowly transitioning into the speed game, but not as fast as obviously the Eastern Conference did, where he just couldn't get it done in Philadelphia. He couldn't get it done in New Jersey, but we'll see if he can do it in San Jose. So kudos to Joe Tessitore and Curtis Gabriel. Ian, your kudos.
Yeah, we already touched base on Joe Douglas and Steve Cohen, but my kudos, I got two kudos. One certainly goes to Tua Tagovailoa, the former Alabama quarterback and now starting quarterback for the Miami Dolphins. Congratulations on him winning his first NFL start, which he really had nothing to do with the win. His defense put up 21 of the 28 points that they scored in the win over the Rams. And then Drew Lock, what a comeback over the team that chokes more than any team in the NFL, the Los Angeles Chargers. They trailed 24-3, the Broncos did, and outscored the Chargers 28-6 over the final 21 minutes, with Drew Lock throwing 3 touchdown passes. So for the Broncos, who certainly don't appear to be a playoff team this year, it's nice for the first time maybe since Peyton Manning's been there to see some stability at the quarterback position. So kudos to Tua and to Drew Lock.
Rob DeLuca, your kudos.
Yeah, I've got just one kudos tonight, and it's going to the Tottenham Hotspurs return player Gareth Bale. After 7 years in Real Madrid, he came back to Tottenham in September, and just this past Sunday, he scored his first goal since signing his new contract with Spurs, and it turned out to also be the game winner, which just made the moment that much better. It was a damn shame that it had to be done with no fans in the building, because Gareth Bale means everything to us Tottenham Hotspur fan, as I am one myself. And, I would have loved to have seen that building. It's a brand new building. It would have gone absolutely ballistic if it was allowed to be a packed house to see the return of Gareth Bale and a game-winning goal. But that's the times we're in right now. But kudos to you, Gareth. Keep it going.
Really, really good stuff there. And for every single week, guys, and for everyone that is watching, we will continue to have a kudos segment. So really cool stuff. And we'll be coming up with different kudos once a week from all three of us. Great stuff here, fellas. So let's get to it. Now we're going to pay a couple of bills here for our own network. Guys, on Tuesday, November 10th, the guys return. Al Carl, John Smith, John Diaconti, Ryan Joy from Minutes to Bell Time, and Gary Mihefe will be returning for episode number 26 of episode number 27 of the Essential Wrestling Podcast that returns Tuesday night at 6 p.m. right here on the Eastern Observer and Zingo Channel 198, the I-95 Sports and Entertainment Network. Good stuff there. Let's keep it moving too, fellas. On Saturday, let's actually rewind a little bit. On Saturday, we continue our segment and our partnership with the New York Professional Scouts Association. The Scouts Minute, episode number 29, returns tomorrow, as we will be highlighting the legendary career of former supervisor and special assistant for the Baltimore Orioles, Atlanta Braves, Philadelphia Phillies, and we couldn't fit it on there, the Montreal Expos, John Hageman Sr., who was at one point an FDNY firefighter, but really he is known as the scout who signed John Smoltz, Chipper Jones, and Jason Marquis. Yes, the first two are big names. The third, not so much. Sorry, Jason, if you're watching. You're still a good guy. But listen, all joking aside, though, let's keep it moving forward. on Thursday night, we have a big interview, episode number 42 of the Primetime Rundown interview series powered by StreamYard. We'll be welcoming the Toronto Blue Jays radio voice on Sportsnet 590 up in Toronto, Ben Wagner. He is an Indiana native. I'll be welcoming him to the Primetime Rundown interview series. It should be a lot of fun. Tune in Thursday, November 12th at 8 p.m. right here on the Eastern Observer. And also, Ian Schraier. He's done a fantastic job in his first interview with Hofstra University's athletic communications director. The whole title I won't get into, but Associate Director of Athletics for Communication. There we go. Great.
You got it, Joe.
There we go. It only took me 4 tries. So listen, you did a fantastic job, and we want you back. So now, episode number 43 will continue with Adam Rubin, Associate Athletic Director for Strategic Communications for Stony Brook University. We actually got that cut off there, but we will hide that here. Monday, November 16th at 8 p.m., Ian Schraier will be welcoming the former SNY contributor and New York Mets ESPN 98.7 host at one point. Now he is in the athletic communications field. So really, really cool stuff there. Ian, would you like to add anything, especially for your new co-hosting segment in the interview series?
No, it should be a great interview. Adam certainly has a great background in regards to his career in professional sports and collegiate sports. Thought our first interview with Steve went exceptionally well. We were happy to have him on, and before I know it, next Monday, a week from Monday is going to be here. We'll have Adam on. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's going to be tons of fun, ladies and gentlemen. And again, for everyone here that was watching this evening, we really do appreciate it. Episode number 40, once again, was presented to you by Black Cats NYC. Make sure you get and purchase Andrew Giordano's brand new song, Dirty Little Hipster, out on Amazon and Apple Music and SoundCloud and all of the above. So, ladies and gentlemen, for one final time, we had in the beginning Larry Protakowicz, Ian Schreier's friend. We can't thank him enough for coming on. Ian Schraier, Rob DeLuca, Jim Wexel as well. We can't thank him enough for coming on as well. Steel City Insider for 24/7 Sports. I'm Joey Jarzynka, and for all of us at the Eastern Observer and the Blackjack Media Group, we'll see you next time.